Cutters, Degrassi, Unpopular Opinions.
Hey there, hi there, ho there. It's Jeff Cutter Diamond. Welcome to another Cutter Degrassi Unpopular Opinion. And this is number 176 in the series. And this is a Rick Murray one. I know I've done several unpopular opinions on the Rick Murray situation, but this is a big one. Now, a lot of people actually said this is not really an unpopular opinion. This is basically just all that. But I make an unpopular opinion because of this thing. So, I posted it a week ago, and for context, it's being taped on October 29, 2022. But this unpopular opinion, it's called, Despite Rick and Claudes' storylines with taking a weapon to school being different outcomes, they are similar in many ways. The Rick storyline in Next Gen Season 4 was when he got painted and feathered on the Wacky Brain show by Spinner Jay and Alex, and then took a gun to school for revenge. And Claudes was in Degrassi High when he offed himself because Caitlin was avoiding him. And all that. Yes, one student had one story had a student shoot someone and the other shooting himself, but they were similar in a few ways. And I pointed out 5 ways. I said, 1, both events took place near a school production. Claudes was when the school wanted to put on a talent show, and Rick's events were when Degrassi was in pre-production with Dracula. Number 2 is both had unrequited love interests and they were spurned by their crushes. Claude thought he was with Caitlin and Rick with Emma. Raj and Simpson were involved in both storylines. Simpson was the one who found Claude's body as a student in the bathroom stall and alerted Vice Principal Radich about the finding. And Snake, as the media immersion teacher, tried to tell Principal Radich in the Rick situation that he's not handling Rick very well. Number 4 was both events opened up dialogue over main issues. Claude's death led to discussions about suicide. And Rick's death led to discussions about bullying. And number 5 was both Rick and Claude, in a way, haunted their crushes after their deaths. Claude was in Caitlin's dreams and sent her flowers to get on her nerves about her maybe contributing to his desires to kill himself. However, Joey told Caitlin that she shouldn't give him any quarter. And Rick haunted Emma's day-to-day activities, even though Emma didn't say anything out loud to people that she should have. Well, she should have. In fact, Jay actually snapped Emma out of reality, back into reality. The reason why this is an unpopular opinion is that many people think that the Claude and Rick storylines are not that similar, but they are. Anything I missed, let me know. So before I go to the comments, and one person in particular, after reading over the comments, some background. So it's Degrassi High, it's season 2. Well, the last season of Degrassi High. They only went through 2 seasons of Degrassi High. And Claude was this guy who Caitlin liked after dumping off Joey because they liked movies and the environment. Claude left Caitlin high and dry during a protest, and Caitlin had to serve community service. Claude had to stay away from the situation because he knew he was in deep trouble with his parents and all that. Although Caitlin should have blasted Claude and put him to the sword. Anyway, Claude is ready to go at a school talent show thing and wants to recite a poem, but it's a macabre style poem that Lucy and Bronco don't think is good. So, he's rejected. And then Claude also having problems with his family. Both his parents don't really like him or want him around. Joanne tries to help things out, but she can't do anything about it. He tells Caitlin that, I won't bother you ever again. I just want to say goodbye. It was kind of cryptic. And then with the new found technology of sound editing, we find out that while Mr. Wallfish is talking about Macbeth to certain students, we kind of hear a faint gunshot because Claude had taken a gun to the school and said that he was going to any more classes. What has this school ever done for me? Snake has to go to the bathroom, and then he apparently does, and then he finds someone stretched out with the legs stretched out underneath the stall. So he basically said, "Are you okay?" He opens up the stall and finds the dead body, and Snake in his weird hairstyle and all that gags. He goes to the office and finds Raj, who's not the principal, he's the vice principal, and tells him about this stuff, and then Raj believes him, and they go find about Claude's body. Throughout the school, students and staff are baffled by Claude's death and all that. He's positively identified, and then Raj talks to Joanne's class, then had Tabby and Eric, 2/3 of the bully group with Dwayne. Joanne blames herself for not taking matters into her own hands, but Raj says, I don't know what you could have done, Joanne. And then Raj makes this poignant speech about how we're all overwhelmed, but we can't kill ourselves because once we do, everything's over and we can't come back from it. Over in another class, Lucy and Spike talk about how selfish it was for Claude's suicide to happen in school grounds because, Claude was troubled, but I guess trying to make us look bad, feel bad, and all that. So anyway, yeah, I opened up discussions about this suicide and all that, and then they don't know about what to do with the school talent show. But thanks to Spike's idea at a meeting, said that we could do both. We can have the talent show and have a benefit for suicidal teens. So it works out in the end. Of course, Caitlin is haunted by Claude's death because Claude haunts her in her nightmares. But Joey gets her out of the funk by saying that, Claude purposely did this to make you feel bad and make you look terrible. You can't give him any quarter. And Caitlin realizes Joey was right. They kind of get back together. And then, of course, with Rick, I always do the time stand still stuff, but I'll try to be quick. So Rick hurt Terry in season 3, put her in a coma, and we thought he was gone. Unfortunately for Rick, for us, Rick comes back to the school in Mercy Street in season 4, and everyone is appalled by it. Raj doesn't seem to help matters by not listening to the students and telling Emma not to take part in this thing because of her stupid causes. So anyway, they do an orange ribbon campaign to get back at Rick and try to silently get him out of school, but that fails miserably. Rick stays at the school despite all the bullying that happens to him. Rick gets into a friend group with Toby, Emma, and Heather for the wacky brain thing. But, of course, Heather's replaced by Jimmy, and then all that. He still gets tormented. He decides to retaliate for once by spray painting Spitter and Jay's cars. Alex wants to go after Rick for this. And, they have to do it in such a way that they don't seem like they're incriminating themselves for why Rick did this stuff. So anyway, Rick gets along with Jimmy, even though Jimmy was a tormentor of Rick. And, Spitter, Jay, and Alex are upset by that. And Rick was living in a fantasy world that, he's okay. He's going to rule the school with the trivia smarts, and he's gotten closer to Emma because Emma was right for the picking because Emma didn't have any friends. And she was basically shunned by the school. Logically put, that Spitter, Emma, and all of them have to do something. But anyway, Spitter, Jay, and Alex do the paint and feathers on Rick when he was all alone at the tiebreaker. Or the final round, I would say. And, Rick was upset. So, Rick gets spurned by Emma, who just wanted to pity Rick instead of being boyfriend-girlfriend. So Rick takes the gun, his dad's gun, and goes to the school. Tries to go after Paige, but Paige calms him down by saying everything was childish, and Rick apologizes for what he did to Terry and then goes to clean himself up. Unfortunately, Spitter and Jay trick Rick into believing that Jimmy was the culprit the whole time, and so Rick shoots Jimmy. He goes after Emma for spurning him, but Sean saves the day by inadvertently killing Rick. The students and staff debate Rick's role in this whole thing about being bullied and, what caused Rick to tick badly. Everything looked bad and all that. Students were kind of like, why would he do this? And was he going to kill himself and all that? There was no indication that Rick was going to kill himself, although that still frame at the end of Time Stand Still Part 1 led to he could do a Claude Tanner from Degrassi High, or he could probably shoot up the school. It was unfortunately the latter. So all that. And then, Emma was withdrawn for a while. Although it looked like she was okay, but she was really withdrawn by Secret happened. And then she goes to the ravine with Jay to try to make herself feel normal again, but that fails. But thankfully, because of gonorrhea attack, she realizes what she has done and, in a way, snaps out of it thanks to Jay. All right, so the comments were, in a way, huge. Mary Mortician was living through an analysis of Claude by somebody. Spectacle said, I watched the Rick episode last night and noticed an AIDS poster in the bathroom behind him, which took me back to Degrassi High and the scenes with Dwayne in the bathroom. And I'm like, there was an AIDS poster? Huh, I never focused on that. And the North American Yee said, I feel like a lot of stories from Next Generation are similar to the original Degrassi series. Because Erica had a version like Manny, Emma reminded me of Liz with the protesting, and Craig was abused by his dad just like Rick Monroe was. I have to say the last name because, after all, there were 2 Ricks in the Degrassi series. All right, so not much there. I know some people, I think, probably would say, hey, wait a minute. Why is it unpopular? Well, because, people think that the Claude and Rick situations are fairly dissimilar. They're actually similar in such a way. All right, so Rachel Violetta, who has made a lot of comments on my stuff, and I even referenced her in one of my unpopular opinions about Raditch, said this. This is the kind of thread I live for here. I always firmly believe that Rick was an ex-beat of Claude. They even look kind of similar in an offbeat, good-looking way. Okay. Claude is my #1 favorite character of the entire franchise. When I saw Rick doing the flowers at the locker thing with Terry, in the arrogant way he kind of acted, I immediately thought he was crafted out of Claude's ashes. Okay? The only real difference between Claude and Rick was that Claude turned it inward and Rick turned it outward. Rick was violent. Claude wasn't. Both were loners who took to specific girls and wouldn't give up on them even if they were rebuffed. They were both smart and neither had any real friends. Joanne wasn't really friends with Claude. She was just a does the right thing character. I don't even think this is an unpopular take. I think anyone who wasn't reminded of Claude by Rick was missing something intentional. I'm not sure of the message the show was doing by purposely drawing a parallel between Claude and Rick, but I think it was 2 people that can be similar in a lot of ways and have different ways of responding to inner turmoil. I mean, the problem I have with that line was that, I don't think Degrassi fans in 2004 would have been like, hey, wait a minute, this is similar to something from the Degrassi High series in the 90s. But now they are. Anyway, Rachel says, Rick and Claude both saw themselves as people they weren't. Claude talked about fancy things with big words, but was at a loss sometimes when Caitlin asked him questions on it. Claude thought he was his generation's Che Guevara, and his Waterloo ended up being when he ran away out of fear from the Nukes factory and left Caitlin there to take the blame. The Nukes factory? I thought it was an animal testing facility. And Rick, too, saw himself as someone better than he was. Both boys were smart, but it wasn't past that for both of them, because they didn't fit in and wanted to, despite pushing others away, and they were delusional. Claude was hurt by his family's rejection of him and Caitlin's eventual rejection, in addition to his mother finding a new boyfriend who hated him. It was the last straw. He couldn't be rejected anymore and decided to opt out. Rick was badly hurt by pure rejection, not familial rejection, which is true, very much so. His family stepped by him. Rejection and humiliation propelled him to lose it for the last time. Rick's was the quiz bowl, Claude was the talent show. That's right, that makes sense. I don't think Rick wanted to die. Claude may have, but there were a few things that, if changed, would have saved him from his fate. Rick was more hopeful than Claude, and more focused on pure acceptance and controlling others. Claude was just a loner who never cared about pure acceptance and latched on to one person. That was Caitlin. Claude wasn't much of a control freak as Rick, but that was because Claude accepted from his view that things would always be bad, even if he was happy with Caitlin. He was immersed in anger and self-righteousness over politics. I think Claude actually might have been controlling like Rick, but in a different way. He was waiting for Caitlin all the time, and Caitlin thought Claude's word was gospel, like Terry did with Rick. And Caitlin even had that episode when she was dressing like Claude and storming the halls for people for peace with him. Also, it was said, but not seen, that Claude waited by her locker with flowers for a year after they broke up, and Caitlin felt bothered and stalked by him. And she talks about why she kind of is with Claude and all of that. Claude's flaw was cowardice, an ability to accept rejection, and a nihilistic view. Always thought it was doom and gloom. When he died, I cried for Claude. He wasn't evil, he wasn't cruel. He was a kid that didn't like being a kid, didn't like his family and vice versa, didn't have friends, and didn't like the way the world was. Anyway, as she says, Rick is absolutely Claude's XPY. I've never thought otherwise, but it made me subconsciously more sympathetic to Rick. If I hadn't picked him for new Claude so fast. Without Claude, there probably would have still been a Rick, but he would have been a lot different than the Rick we got. Rick probably still would have been the school shooter because that was his plot, and that's why he was put on the show. To add, Claude would never have been a school shooter. It wasn't him. He didn't want the world to suck. He couldn't handle the truth. Galen saw the bad things and looked for solutions, but Claude saw the bad things, tried solutions, and when they didn't work, got caught up in a state of mind that nothing was ever going to get better and opted out. He may have wanted to hurt Caitlin by guilt tripping her with that letter and the flowers, but he was on the end of his rope. He's a precedent for suicide and said that I think Claude was misunderstood, and I love the character and his actor. He felt real in a way that was hard to do, and his death shook me. Well, Rachel, you shook me with your analysis about Claude. Surprised you didn't go too far into Rick's thing, but I guess in a way she's trying to say that, without Claude in Degrassi High, Rick's story in Degrassi Next Gen probably would not be like it was. I agree. I totally agree with that philosophy. But, it is what it is, and that's all there is. The thing I also took away from this with Rachel is that, Rachel does pretty well and, tries to explain it in such a way. It's a little long-winded, kind of like what I do, but, that's the way it is. I'm long-winded too. But the fact of the matter is that, when it comes down to it, it's a lot of similarities. I mean, when you look at everything and the points I've made, it's that, it just had to happen that way. I mean, yeah, you could say it's not an unpopular opinion, but anyway, the 5 things. It took place near a school production. I mean, Claude's events were when they wanted to put on a talent show, and they did with the added value of making it a benefit about suicidal teens. Whereas Rick's offense. Now, I don't know if Degrassi was going to put on Dracula before Rick's death. That's kind of the question mark, but, they decided to do this whole Dracula thing in lieu of Rick's death. And I know that Radich was a bit spooked by this. And who could blame him? I mean, Degrassi's in a negative light. It's a week after Rick dies, and then instead of just saying we have to keep postponing it, which would have been the proper move, he says we have to cancel it. And I feel like, in a way, he's trying to hide something. And JT and Liberty kind of take him to task over it. But yeah, they still did Dracula. Hatzelackles, when she becomes principal, green lights the project. Because she said that the school board did their job trying to help us out. We need to do something for the students. And, Dracula's still on. But it was not with the added thing for a benefit for maybe potential school shooters and bullying and all that. That could have worked out. I wish Hatzelackles had figured that out, too. The unrequited love interest. Claude thought he was with Caitlin, Rick with Emma. I mean, I talked, about the Claude and Caitlin thing. Rachel said a lot, but, Rick with Emma. Emma started the Orange Ribbon campaign to try to get Rick out of Degrassi. Didn't know how bad it was going to be that the students were going to take it, like in bullying. And, when she was given the check by Rick, She thought it would be good because she went back to Cosgrove phase and not destroy Rick phase. But then she saves him from a massive beating at the dot, and everyone just says that Emma is hypocritical and dumps her off as a friend. But the weird thing to me is, you know, I don't know, that's my train of thought. Yikes. But anyway, the weird thing is that, Emma didn't know about Rick's creepiness towards her and all that. Yes, he gave her an instant kiss, part of the kissing bet with Toby, which Toby easily won. But the simple fact is that, Rick stayed true to Emma and all that. Thought that Emma was perfect for saving his butt, but Emma was just doing it to maybe protect herself from harm if this whole thing had to do, the bullying thing led to trouble. But yeah, Rick was always close to Emma, and then when Rick got rejected by Emma at the end of Wacky Rain, he felt a need to do something about it. But let's not forget that he didn't go after Emma first. He wanted to go after Paige first. And his hatred for Paige was a whole lot there. I know I did an unpopular opinion about the fact that, the straw that broke Rick's back was probably Paige because of the fact that Paige spread false rhetoric. In his eyes, mind you. I don't feel the same way. But yeah, he always had a hatred for Paige. But the simple fact was that, it didn't happen. And then, Claude and Rick haunted their crushes. Claude was in Caitlin's head the whole time before Joy snapped Caitlin back to reality. And Emma was holding things in internally about Rick's thing, saying that maybe she had a part to play in the bullying, which led to the death. And she almost died. I mean, fair enough. People were walking on eggshells around Emma. But Jay snapped her out of her funk, brought her back to reality, and Emma realized that she was trying to be perfect. She was trying to be the old Emma, but she couldn't because of how Rick got to her. And that's just huge. And it opened up the dialogue. Like Claude's death led to conventional suicide, whether it is a sin or it was warranted. And then the Rick thing was discussion about bullying, and that, even though Rick was at fault at the end of everything, still the bullying should not have happened, and it should have been like squashed in a sense. And let's not forget the last bit is about Raditch and Simpson being in both storylines. The fact of the matter is that Simpson was the student that found Claude's dead body and told Vice Principal Raditch about the situation. And then in Next Gen, they're both teachers. Well, Snake is the media immersion teacher and Raditch is the principal. And they interact and all that, but Simpson is not too pleased with how Raditch is pushing everything about Rick aside. And I get it with Raditch. It's like, Raditch is just upset with everything happening at his school and all that. I mean, what principal wouldn't feel that way? But still, Raditch's actions were deplorable. And to me, I feel that Raditch was trying to, calm everyone down and calm himself down because maybe he did feel bad about sprinting Rick and all that. But yeah, the interactions happened. I mean, Raditch was booted from Degrassi because of his inactions and all that. His double-edged sword. But yeah. But the simple fact is that Claude might have been selfish for killing himself. And I think he was. And Rick was selfish for deciding to take a gun to school for retaliation and to shoot up somebody and all that. If he had killed himself, maybe we'd have more sympathy. But Rick is a school shooter. We can't sympathize. I'm sorry. That's how it goes. Anyway, I'm Jeff Diamond. Thanks for watching.